Cell phones seem to be everywhere and are now a routine part of our lives. But when you carry that portable communications wonder, are you also carrying around a bug that could be listening in wherever you go? Well, probably not for most of us, but it is possible. News stories recently revealed that the FBI used ordinary cell phones to monitor the room conversations of suspects. This could be accomplished by changes to the phone's firmware, the internal software that makes them run, which might require physical access to the phone, or could even be done remotely in some cases, depending on the phone and the level of cellular company cooperation. Now, unless you're a mobster, terrorist, or perhaps a peace activist, you're not likely to be targeted this way by the authorities. But it's also possible that illicit bugs could be implemented the same way, and it's always worthwhile to know your technology, so let's look at some easy clues that might suggest that something unusual could be going on with your cell phone. The trick is to remember that everything done on these phones needs electricity, and that all comes from the batteries. These batteries will degrade over time and tend to give reduced service after many charges. But in general, if you suddenly notice that your phone's battery is running out much faster than usual, and you haven't been talking more, this could suggest that your phone is busily transmitting room conversations via its microphone while you thought it was idle, and so draining the battery more rapidly. In such a case, turning off the phone may not actually stop this behavior, since firmware could be altered to make a phone look like it was turned off when it was actually still on. Taking out the battery, though, is pretty much a sure thing to shut down all significant activity. And don't worry, there's not enough room in most modern cell phones for hidden extra batteries of a size that could do much more than keep the phone's clock running. A similar clue that your phone may be transmitting behind your back is if it just seems warmer than usual between calls. You've probably noticed that cell phones tend to get warm as you talk longer. This is normal while calls are in progress, but it would be very odd indeed if your phone didn't cool off some between calls. Both of these clues, especially the unusually rapid draining of the phone's battery, could also be indications that room audio is being recorded within the flash memory of the phone for later bulk transmission via the phone's data capabilities, and bulk transmission can be more difficult to detect. Modern phones can contain a lot of flash memory, so this is a real possibility. Finally, if you have a conventional GSM phone, the type used most around the world and the standard for both AT&T Singular and T-Mobile, your ears can tell you what's going on. You've probably heard the annoying GSM buzz interference that can leak into speakers and other audio equipment during calls. That's what an actual call sounds like, a continuing pulsed buzzing. If your phone was bugging you in real time, the transmission of the room audio would usually create this same sound. If you hear it between calls, that's a possible indication that your phone may have been compromised. Note that there is similar interference that can occur briefly between phone calls at various intervals for voicemail indications, text messages, and phone control updates to the mobile network. These can occur at any time, like these. But the continuous pulsing buzzing like this will normally only occur during calls or continuous data transmission, and that's the sound to be suspicious of if you hear it when your phone is supposedly idle. This interference listening technique is much less useful if you have a CDMA technology phone, like from Verizon or Sprint in the US, or if you're using a new 3G GSM phone in 3G mode, which also uses a type of CDMA technology. Since much less audible interference is produced from these phones, you may not be able to hear it at all. But the battery and heat-related clues from earlier will still likely work fine even in these cases. Your cell phone almost certainly isn't a bug, but it never hurts to know what is and isn't possible, especially with an expanding and powerful technology that most of us carry with us wherever we go. Until next time, be seeing you.
Privacy advocates, a troubling new report. Federal officials are routinely asking courts to order cell phone companies to provide tracking information on criminal suspects, and in some cases, judges are granting the requests without probable cause being shown. That's according to the Washington Post. Civil rights attorney Avery Friedman joins us now live from Cleveland, Ohio. Avery, great to see you.
Nice to see you, Kira.
So, is it legal?
Well, you know, that's a wonderful question, and we have a dilemma. We have this zooming technology which deals with enhanced tracking information. We have 250 million Americans who are walking around with cell phones, but you know what, Kira? No one is really giving a lot of thought to the fact that you're carrying around a GPS, a location tracking device. So law enforcement, thinking we're going to have a better tool to get our hands on law enforcement, are simply going to the communications, the carriers, and saying, give me all your records.
So it is, okay, but you still have to have probable cause to do this, right? Or is there something other than probable cause?
Well, it's a very good question, because that's where the dilemma is. Under our Bill of Rights, under the Fourth Amendment, before anyone, law enforcement, can engage in a search and a seizure, pick up your cell phone information, you're supposed to have probable cause. But you know what? Congress passed two laws that said, well, maybe you don't have to have that highest standard. So, you know, what's happening is some federal courts are granting law enforcement to pick up these cell phone information and this tracking information without probable cause. So the cellular companies don't know what to do. The law enforcement agencies don't know what to do. And for those people that are carrying around cell phones, are thinking, I don't want the government tracking me. I haven't done anything wrong.
So does that mean yet we need to see more legislation enacted to try and clear this up because of all the differences within the law?
Well, you know, that's exactly the point. What's going to happen is, because we now seem to have two different standards, a constitutional one, probable cause, and a lesser standard under some federal laws. Ultimately, what we're going to need right now is Congress to consider the issue on what is going to be required before law enforcement gets a hold of your personal tracking system in your cell phone.
Do we know if this is even working? I mean, are they getting these high-value targets, these tough criminals, these fugitives, by doing this? Is it successful?
Well, it's hard to say, because when law enforcement goes in to get its warrant, its order, Kira, that's generally sealed. So there's no way, there's no information gathering where we can evaluate this. One thing we know for sure is that different federal judges are doing different things, and that tells us we need some uniformity in how these matters are being handled.
All right, I don't want to confuse this anymore, but are the laws the same, different, cell phones versus hard lines?
Well, yes, because the technology that we're dealing with is relating to emergency services. All the cell phones now are getting a hold of people like you, Kira, and everybody else saying, hey, look, if you want to keep track of, if you're meeting somebody at the mall, or you're trying to keep track of your kids, then we have this new service. Well, that doesn't exist on hardline. It exists in the cell phone, and that's where Congress has to pay attention.
So could this eventually, I mean, obviously you and I are not fugitives, so we hope.
I don't think so.
Exactly. Not that I know of recently.
Yeah.
Could this affect us, the average person, the non-criminal, or maybe less offenses, or lesser...
Well, yeah, I think ultimately the question is, if law enforcement thinks that Kira Phillips is doing something wrong, they should be responsible to prove to a federal judge that there's probable cause. If not, there's total chaos. The whole protection against search and seizure, and privacy advocates and everyday citizens make the argument, are going to be affected by it, and it's therefore time for Congress to now take a look at this.
It'll be interesting to follow this.
Yep.
Civil rights attorney.